All right, guys. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Island Vacation Travel Podcast. I am your host, Al Philogen, and I am thrilled to have a very, very special guest, Miss Alison Gieschen. I did not check to see how you pronounce your name. How do you pronounce your
It,
last name?
that was very close. It's Ishan.
Gieschen. Very
Mhm.
nice, very nice. I have a very strange last name as well, so I totally understand. Now, also, she is also known worldwide as the nautical novelist. And there's a reason why she has that name, and we're going to go into that today. Alison has sailed the world and turned her adventures into unforgettable stories. Sorry about that. That capture the heart of life at sea. And we are going to dive into that today. We're going to ask a few questions. We're going to go into what life is like out there. But before we continue, guys, this episode is going to be sponsored by Cozy Earth. Visit cozyearth.com and they get 15% off of the website. Just use our code Island Vacation. All right. Now, before we dive in as well, let me give a big shout out to our businesses we have running. If you love travel, inspired fashion, check out our store, Island Vacation Travel Wear, IVTA Wear Store. That is IVTA Wear Store. Check out the link at the bottom. All right. Now, if you're planning a getaway, don't forget to check Island Vacation Concierge and Transportation and Concierge Services. Now, that's enough. Awesome. All right. And Alison, I want to thank you so much for your patience, first of all. I do have a question that I'm pretty sure some people might be interested in concerning if you have any rituals or any special things or special routines you do when you get on board that keeps you grounded in like your experience of traveling around the world, because it was a dream of you and your husband. So do you have any routines or any things that you guys do to keep you grounded?
I would have to say that living on a boat is so different than land life because land life, you do have rituals. You come home at a certain time, you make dinner at a certain time. Life is pretty predictable for the most part. And it's really hard to have that same consistency when you're living on a boat because sometimes we're doing passages. So we're out in the middle of the ocean and days and nights merge together because you've got to do night watches all night long. And then you are going to be like sleeping during the day. And there's just the only routine is being awake and being asleep and one of you keeping an eye on what's going outside. And
Right.
during that time, I don't do any writing. So my writing takes place when we're at an anchor in a harbor
Mhm.
and I can't even say that there's a routine there because um, every country is different. Every harbor is different. Sometimes we people we know in the harbor. So our day will be, well, let's go join our friends and we're going to go for a hike, or let's try to get to shore and find a grocery store. Or, it's just unpredictable and every day is different. And then sometimes we're stuck in a harbor where we don't know anybody and we've kind of seen everything there is to see. So that's a great time for me to sit down and write because there's not a lot else to do. I can sit down for 2, 3 days in a row from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed and do nothing but solid writing. So the only really ritual we have is when we get to someplace new and we drop the anchor for the first time, then we have what my husband calls his anchor beer. So the anchor is set. We pull back on the anchor to make sure that it's set. We pull in all our lines. We make our boat all tidy. And then we pull our chairs up onto the deck and we get out our anchor beers and we toast and we kiss and we celebrate being in that moment where we are exactly when we're meant to be there. And that's just being thankful that we made it someplace safe again, dropped our anchor. That's our one little ritual that we always do is just our anchor beer.
That is marvelous. That is very, very marvelous. That you guys have been grateful. And I love the idea. Your husband has a great idea. Yes. Every country you get to, anchor bear. That makes a lot of sense. And that way you get a chance to appreciate you guys' time. And like you just mentioned, you were supposed to be there at that very time in this very moment, the whole ethos
Yes.
of time. That is amazing that you all recognize that. That is something else. That is something else. Wow. Wow. Makes you really appreciate. And I'm very fascinated to hear how you said that, because I was wondering how you do that. Get to a new country and write, because you'll be curious to see everything that's going on.
Hmm.
So I was a little curious about to find out how you go about that. So we're gonna go into that just a little bit. Um, I would say so. Your novels are so grounded in real nautical life. How do you actually how do your like your actual voyages like actually influence your fiction?
Can you repeat the question, please?
So saying for novels, they're very grounded, like in the nautical life, sailing and everything else. So how do
Right.
your actual voyages influence like the fictional part of it? Of course, you touched on it a little bit with the mermaid, the book about a mermaid. I would like to just elaborate on it a little bit.
So we do have memoirs that are, the
Yeah.
actual accounting, and that's factual. That's our biographies. But my fiction, I just pull in like real experiences. For instance, one of the characters in my book, The Seven, is a sailor. And so the boat that he chooses is the boat that I have a mentor named John Kretschmer, and he's written 5 books about sailing. And I went on a 1,000-mile training passage with him in heavy weather, prepare for being out in oceans. And he broke the world record on a Contessa, a 32-foot Contessa, where he went from the 44th parallel, New York, went all the way around the Cape into San Francisco. And so I fell in love with that boat, and I put that boat into my story. And the sailor that was from Croatia,
Okay.
knew about this Contessa 32 and how seaworthy it was. And so that's the boat he chose in my story. So
Okay.
every single character in the Seven has actual facts that come from me in my life that I just put in their stories. And it's their vision of things that they look at, how they appreciate beauty. Um, it's just really hard to explain, but when I write, it's a movie playing in my head, and I take my real thoughts and my real experiences and I just get them in there. I write them in, and it makes it more real for me. And I think probably more real for the people reading it because they can feel my passion.
Right. That's amazing. That is very amazing. And I remember that. Yes, sir. So that is how you go about and do it. Okay. We're just very curious about that. And that would just be, and I'm assuming that's just one example, but you try to
Mhm.
wove stories all with realistic, and that is amazing. Wow. And I just looked as well, you have a mentor. Of course, it's always very important to have a mentor. That's the best way to do anything, to get anything done. So that's amazing to know that you actually prepared and practiced and everything to make sure that you prepared for this journey. So that's very, very good. It's
Can I
very
tell you
awesome.
a quick story about my mentor?
Absolutely.
So our first ocean crossing, we were with a rally. That's where a group of boats cross together, and you spend a
Mhm.
week preparing, and you have weather routers, and everybody's there as a support group. Well, our rally took off for our first time crossing the Atlantic, and we didn't get to go with them because we had an engine problem, and we had to stop in around Wilmington area
Mhm.
and get our boat looked at because my husband didn't want to cross the ocean and not have our engine working. So,
Yeah.
long story short, 10 days later, nobody could find anything wrong with it, and we had to cross on our own. And everybody's been out there now for 10 days. So the
Wow.
weather router said he was still working with us. He said, you can go right now. You got an hour to get out, get across the Gulf Stream as fast as you can. And once you're over the Gulf Stream, you're good to head to the Caribbean because we're going to the Virgin Islands. So we cross the Gulf Stream. It took us 24 hours. We get across. Daylight comes, the sun comes up, and all of a sudden we realize we're in 10, 15-foot waves, and the winds are building from 25 to 30 knots. And before
Wow.
long, we're in 20-foot waves, and we were in a perfect storm where the two fronts converged, making the waves higher and higher.
Yeah.
And the waves were pounding on our boat, and it ripped the dinghy, the life rails right out of the front of the deck of our boat, put the dinghy through the lifelines. We almost got dismasted. It was threatening to dismast us. We lost our solar panel, our dinghy, our windsurfing gear. So just all this $14,000 worth of damage to our boat. And we had to turn around and go back. So we did a 500-mile loop, and 3 days later ended up 10 miles from where we started. And we were just devastated. It was our first ocean crossing. And I thought, this is terrible. So I developed PTSD, and we
Yeah.
got our fixed. Insurance took care of everything. We got a new dinghy, new solar panels, everything replaced. and we headed out to cross the Atlantic again. This time we're on
Wow.
our own. And it was really scary again. And we got just really horrible weather. And we did make it, but we had to go to Bermuda first. We had to make an emergency stop in Bermuda. And then from Bermuda, we finally got to the Caribbean. But as we're going to the Caribbean, I was so stressed out at this point. I was thinking to myself, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. I'm getting so anxious and I have so much anxiety. It's not worth it. So we pulled into St. Martin, and there's 100 boats in this harbor. And we dropped anchor, and I kept thinking, tomorrow morning's going to be the morning I wake up and tell Dan I can't do this anymore. So we dropped the anchor, and Dan has the AIS on, which you can see all the names of the boat around us. 3 boats away was John Kretschmer, my mentor.
Wow. So you couldn't
Yeah.
quit.
So out of all the places in the world, we talked about that synchronicity thing. Out of all the places in the world, my mentor, who took me out on a 1,000-mile training passage and said, "You're going to be just fine," was 3 boats away.
Yep.
So we called him on the radio. I called him on the radio, and we're like, "John, this is Dan and Allison, and we're anchored right next to you." And he's like, "Well, come on over for happy hour." So we get all anchored. We get in our dinghy. We go over there. Everybody's hugging. There's a couple other people on board, and everybody's telling their stories. And finally, John turns. He's sitting next to me. He goes, "So, Allison, how's it going?" I'm like, "John, it's terrible. We got caught in this really bad storm, and we had all this damage to our boat, and now I'm terrified, and I don't think I can do this anymore." And he starts laughing, and he goes, "Do you know how lucky you are?" I'm like, "No." And he goes, "Your boat did fine, you did fine, and you're still out here, and it'll probably never happen again." He goes, "You are very lucky, and you are going to be just fine." And he was the only person on the planet that could have looked at me and told me this, and I would have internalized it and believed it. And had he not been 3 boats away,
right,
when we pulled into St. Martin, I might not have been on this journey. I might not be here today.
So that's all divine timing once again. That is amazing.
Yeah, or where we are meant to be when we're there. That's just, there's no doubt about that.
Timing. Amazing, dude. That's really, really amazing. That story was amazing. To see it all came back to the where you would have gotten PTSD. The person you could have gotten PTSD, which was right there to tell you, "You got this. Let's go."
You got
That's
this.
amazing. Wow. And when you mentioned Bermuda, I got PTSD because that's where I got my reality check.
Ah.
I got my reality check there. I mean, I've been left down on an island and all kind of stuff. Nothing compares to what we experienced in Bermuda, because it was
Yeah,
1
there
minute.
can be some really bad weather around that island. We know.
The weird thing was there wasn't any bad weather. It was nice, beautiful glass water, and then all of a sudden, the water was over the whole cruise ship, over the deck. I was like,
Wow.
"This is cool." Yeah, like the whole inside of the pool was empty of pool water, and seawater was in there. I was like,
Well, you know why, don't you? Because that's the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, my mom told me lots of stories about there. When we were approaching it, then I realized I never thought about cruise ship on Bermuda. Why are we going out here? So I totally get what you're saying, but of course, it's not like a sailboat. That's a whole nother ball. That's a whole different ball. And I'm very, very, very appreciative that you're educating our people that it's not all fun and games when you come on a boat. I mean, it's a dream. It sounds like a dream, but it really is. It has some challenges. It has some challenges.
It has some nightmares. The dream has some nightmares.
The night, it's a dream, so it has to have some good and some bad. But I mean, when it gets bad, it really is a nightmare on the water, because you really have no choice. But like your mentor said, you're here, you're lucky, you're meant to be here. All timing, divine timing. You were the one that was supposed to tell this story, so you were the one that was supposed to go for it. That's how it works. That I've learned. That I've learned. So let me ask you, do you find that travel itself teaches you more about writing, or does writing depend on the way you travel?
I'd say they kind of go hand in hand. I think that the travel is important to inspire the stories and the experiences. But for me, being able to write down these experiences and incorporate it into something that I love is my inspiration. And the good part about it is that even things that go wrong or that happen that aren't pleasant, when you write about it, it gives you time to reflect on it and make it part of the adventure, you know? Otherwise, there's no outlet for all these things that happen. But I've got a really great outlet. I can write about it. I can make people wonder. I can make people feel what I felt, and we kind of laugh about it later. So I think that the marriage between the travel and the writing is just a match made in heaven for me. They're both amazing, and I wouldn't trade either one of them. I wouldn't want to be out here not writing, and without this travel, I wouldn't have the inspiration to write.
And one more comparison. Would you trade teaching for being on the water doing what you do?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Would you trade going back to teaching in a school versus writing and traveling the world?
No. Would I trade it? No. No, 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 no. I loved my time. I love I loved my time as a teacher, and
Mhm.
I taught third grade. I had started with high school and I didn't like it at all because everybody hated English class. They walked in the door hating me
Yeah,
like before,
yeah, yeah,
and nobody wanted
yeah,
to take English class in 11th and 12th grade. And third graders walked in every morning and they loved me and they hugged me and I could tell
yes,
them stories and I could
yes,
influence them and I could teach them things, and I really really enjoyed that.
yeah.
So I'm happy that I had that experience, but I wouldn't trade it for what I'm doing now.
So you say this is just a little bit more fulfilling for you personally. Okay. Okay. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I totally get what you said about the kids. Teaching the younger kids gave you a little bit more fulfillment. They appreciated English, and of course they just want to speak. So they appreciate the teacher. They really appreciate it. That's the very same thing I found out with
Yes,
my mom as well, teaching the younger kids, because they're just more receptive to the.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I just thought it would be a very interesting question to ask you, whether you miss the whole life of teaching and being in one place versus traveling the world. I mean, it's only just a no-brainer that you'd want that.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. And can you share a specific travel moment that became a story or character in one of your books, other than like the, well, I mean, we mentioned your mentor, that was one. You did mention, well, the mermaid, of course, you have all the different, well, there's sort of characters anyways. Whether you're speaking of the creatures of the sea, there's still characters in the whole book. So, but other
Right.
than that, are there any other characters that you feel are noteworthy that we should look out for when we read any of the books? Or, or who want to look coming up?
I don't want to give any spoiler alerts.
Okay.
But one of my favorite characters was from the Algarve, which is a beautiful stretch along Spain and Portugal. And
Okay.
we sailed into these little tiny fishing villages and would anchor there for a day or two. And I got to walk among the people and I got to just sit down and watch these fishermen and what they do and how simple their lives are and how different their culture is from anything that I've experienced. And so one of my characters, Sophia, is this little girl that grew up in one of these fishing villages in the Algarve. So
Okay.
she's kind of special to me because I pictured her living in this village and I wrote about her life. And I don't know where this stuff comes from, but it would just flows onto the paper, and these characters, like, they have a life of their own. When I start writing, they take over. And then another one that's kind of special to me is the sailor, of course. And the funny part is, you know, there's horses in this book. There's horses that actually each person has an encounter with a horse who looks inside their soul and
Yeah.
decides if they appreciate the gifts of the earth.
Yeah.
So my sailor buddy there, he shipwrecked on one of the islands in the French Polynesians. And as I'm writing this book, I'm researching horses from every location in the world that a character comes from. So I learned so much about these horses that came to the Marquesan Islands. And I know how their ancestors got here, and I know about their evolution and how they ended up on these little tiny islands. And so the first time that we crossed the Pacific, we came to the island of Kivaoa, and it was our first experience in the French Polynesians. Our first walk off the boat, we had to go check into the country and do all the paperwork, and then we're walking down a road, and there comes a herd of horses, and they're not in fences or pastures. They're just walking down the road, and they're all friendly. Excuse me, they're all friendly. And I just got so excited, and I ran up to them, and I just had to hug one. I'm like, I know where you came from. I know where your ancestors came from. And they just were exactly like I pictured. And I just like teared up, and I'm like, I wrote about you. I know you. And it just was very emotional for me to meet these creatures that I had researched and envisioned and put into my story. And then here I am on this little island meeting them.
Again, divine timing. They came to meet you. You spoke of them, so they came to meet you. That's amazing.
Yes.
That is amazing. Very nice, Alison. And what would you say is one of the most, like the biggest lesson travel has taught you that you think every adventure should probably know about or should probably be aware of?
Actually, there's two things. One is that you have no idea how the majority of the world lives and their values and their cultures and the things that are important to them until you go and you're among them and you live there. And you think you have this conception, and it's nothing like you think.
That's right.
Going into Turkey and to Istanbul, and the kindness and the generosity of those people was absolutely astounding. And just living among them for a week, I learned so much and how kind they are. And they're a totally different religion and a totally different race of people, but humans are the same, when it comes down to it as people. But our cultures are very, very different. And you can't imagine that. You can't get it by reading. You can't get it by watching TV. You have to go and you have to experience it yourself. And these people on these Marquesan Islands, again, totally different than the people in Istanbul, but these beautiful, amazing souls. And I've so enjoyed like getting to know them and being invited into their homes and having dinner with them, because it's the kind of thing that happens. You meet them and you're nice to them and they're like, come to my house for dinner. And you get to sit among their families and see how they treat
That's
their elders and their
amazing.
children.
That is
Oh, trying
absolutely
to reconnect.
amazing. Wow. Yeah. Different people, different cultures, different backgrounds, different way of life.
Oh no.
And like you said, Alison, people can't imagine how other people live or how other people think or how a way of life
A lot of their
is
issues
in
today.
another part of the world or another community or another country unless you actually visit
Yeah.
that place. Then you'll actually get like a brief appreciation for how they live, what they do, and how they do it, because we all don't live the very same way, but for the basic rights and the basic of everything that we need, we're human at core. We have our basic needs, our five needs, our Maslow's hierarchy. It's all just the same. So I appreciate that information and those I appreciate that information just to share with our people, right? So clearly, traveling has brought you a lot of experience, a lot of learning. It impacts everything that you do. It actually helps you write. Um, we have some very great books that you actually wrote, which I plead that our audience goes and make sure you support. Please support. Please support Miss Alison with her endeavors of
At time.
getting all those books out there and sharing her story and her dreams with you, because not everyone gets to live such an exciting life, right? Not everyone gets a chance to travel the world, right? Now, of course, I know she has some meaningful projects and stuff that's going on. I think we might have lost her for a split second here, but I will let you know that we will be sharing her link for the website, which is sailmates.org. That's SAILMATES.org. And also AlisonGieschen.com. That's ALISONGIESCHEN.com. And she has some amazing books out there. So I want to make sure you guys check it out, support everything that she does. She's traveled to 46 countries and 4 continents. So she has a wealth of knowledge as to how to travel, where to travel, and who to travel with, right? So again, we want to thank Alison so much for her time. This has been amazing. Want to thank you so much for sharing your stories and also your wisdom. Listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, remember to check out Island Vacation Travel Agency for your next getaway. Or you can check out our transport section and courier services to make travel effortless, and also our store, ivtaware.store.com. We have you covered with all your stylish gear for the perfect adventure and also the perfect weather. And like I said, please go and visit Alison at AlisonGieschen.com and join the sailing community at sailmates.org. If you're a sailor, check it out. Let them know Island Vacation Travel Agency sent you and support her books. This is the lifestyle. You will show lots of appreciation. Again, guys, want to thank All Glory for all the support. This episode was brought to you by allglory.com.